Week 5 of the 2025 NFL season is officially here, and we have a handful of games that are very interesting. So in today's video, I want to give you guys my predictions to every game of week number 5. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's get into it. And we are going to begin on the left side with our Thursday night football game, the LA Rams going up against the San Francisco 49ers. This is a massive game for both these teams. Both these teams currently sit at 3-1. And have a lot on the line in order to get this division. This is a very competitive division with the likes of Arizona still being in the mix, the Seattle Seahawks, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, who are also in the mix as well. San Francisco's there, LA's there. This is a very competitive division, and every single in-division matchup is very, very important. That's why that week 1 victory over the Seattle Seahawks for the Niners was such a big victory for them, because it could be the difference between getting the 1 seed or the 2 seed or the 3 seed. I mean, it's just that big of a difference, and this is another one of those huge games. Now, unfortunately for the San Francisco 49ers, they are without a handful of massive players on their team. No Brock Purdy, no Ricky Pearsall, no Brandon Ayuk, no Nick Bosa, no Juwan Jennings. The only guy that's really out there for this team is Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, and a handful of other guys. Oh, and no George Kittle either. They are completely banged up, and because of that, I have a hard time predicting them to win this game. Now, granted, Mac Jones has came in and has played good football in a couple of the past games, but they were not going up against a caliber of an opponent like the LA Rams, who, by the way, the LA Rams are in my top 5 in my power rankings, so I think very highly of them. Now, as for the LA Rams side of things here, this game is pretty easy, at least on paper. San Francisco will make things interesting because they're well coached. They have enough talent with guys like McCaffrey and a couple other young receivers that I think might be able to make a couple plays. I think San Francisco will do enough to keep the game somewhat competitive, but I do think at some point the LA Rams will pull away. I'm not expecting a terribly close game, especially later in the game. I do think they'll stay in it for about 2-3-ish quarters, but I think by the 4th quarter, you will see LA start to separate. In terms of a score, I'm thinking something along the lines of 27-18. Next up, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Cleveland Browns in London. I feel like the Minnesota Vikings are being put in a really weird situation here. They just had another European game, I believe, in Dublin, where they lost and didn't play that great. And now they're asked to go to London, again, overseas, not being able to sleep in your own bed, playing in a country that, probably won't be rooting too hard for you because they don't probably have you as their favorite team. It's just a weird spot for this team. Then you also throw into the mix that JJ McCarthy probably won't be the starter, so you're going again with Carson Wentz. And Wentz, let's be honest, is I guess an okay backup quarterback, but he's definitely not a good starter. And then on the flip side, we have a really interesting story going on here with Cleveland. We all saw the Shedeur Sanders mime interview, which I thought was kind of corny. Shedeur, lock the hell in. What are we doing here?
Third quarterback.
But beyond that, Dylan Gabriel is the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns with Joe Flacco as the QB2. And I think it's okay for Dylan Gabriel to get the start. I do worry a little bit, though, about this matchup, specifically for him. If he can just take care of the football, not turn the ball over, get the ball where the ball needs to be in terms of the short pass game, getting the ball to Quinshawn, running the football effectively, relying on this offensive line, I do think the Browns could find some success. We saw last week in Dublin where the Minnesota Vikings really struggled to stuff the run against what is not really a great offensive line in Pittsburgh and not a great running back in Kenneth Gainwell. Cleveland doesn't have the greatest offensive line, but there is some experience there, and Quinshawn Judkins has actually shown a little bit of life. When you compare the rosters, Minnesota is by far and away the more talented team, but both these teams have excellent defenses that I think will make for a pretty ugly, muddy type of football game. So I look at the side of the field right now and I say, who do I trust more? Dylan Gabriel and that offense, or Carson Wentz and that offense? And frankly, I think I trust Carson Wentz a little bit more, but because you add on to the mix that they are now in back-to-back European games, not being able to stay in their own bed, having probably some long flights, I'm actually going to go with the Browns to win this one. I think the Minnesota Vikings are in a situation here where there's a lot being put up against them, and they're going up against a quarterback they have no film of. I think Dylan could provide a bit of a spark on the offensive end, and I think they will run the football well enough, and defensively they're going to lock down. I got an ugly, low-scoring game here, but I got the Browns pulling off the upset versus Minnesota. I have the final score 14-10. Let's go to move over to the Dallas Cowboys going up against the New York Jets. This is a game where I think we're going to see a lot of points scored. The Dallas Cowboys can score points with anybody in the NFL, but their defense can't stop nobody. Whereas on the Jets, they have not played well offensively. But in week 1, they did show a little bit of life when they went up against the Steelers defense that wasn't really awake for that game. So I do think Fields, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, I think they could all have fairly good games versus this Dallas Cowboys defense. It's not a big-time threat. If they can't score points against this Cowboys defense, then this offense has zero chance of keeping them close in any matchup. Ultimately, this game is pretty simple, though. Who do I trust more? Dak Prescott and George Pickens and Javonte Williams, or Justin Fields, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson? Clearly, it's the guys in the blue. Dak Prescott's playing at an MVP level. George Pickens is coming off maybe one of his best games of his entire career. Javonte's having a stellar season. The offensive line is doing a nice job. And Brian Schottenheimer is absolutely cooking right now. Whereas in New York, I just don't know what I can trust defensively to get stops. Yes, Sauce Gardner will make life difficult for Pickens, but you also throw in Ferguson in there. Ryan Flournoy has made some plays. Jalen Tolbert had a big catch last week. Dak will find a way to get the ball to those guys. Whereas I just think the Cowboys defense can get enough stops versus a really subpar Jets offense. Granted, I do think Justin Fields' legs should come into play here, so I'm going to assume a high-scoring, relatively close game where Dallas pulls it off a little bit late. I have the final score 34-28. Next up, let's talk about the New York Giants squaring off against the New Orleans Saints. Now, surprisingly, I do believe the Saints are the betting favorite to win this game, at least from the last time I checked a few days ago. That might have changed. Don't quote me on that. But I think that's a pretty fair bet to take if you are rooting for the Giants to potentially be an underdog in this game. The Giants are coming off a game that probably gave them a ton of confidence. We saw Scatabo going crazy on the sidelines. We saw Jackson Dart dancing in the end zone. We saw Brian Dable, hugging and kissing Jackson Dart on the sideline. I'm being figurative, of course, but in some ways it kind of felt like it. There is some new energy now brought this Giants team, even if they may not have the greatest quarterback play. Just seeing somebody that has a little bit of moxie and I guess some aura to him has pushed this offense to being at a slightly better level than where they were with Russell Wilson. Defensive line-wise, they're one of the best in the NFL, and I think their young secondary is making a couple of plays too. Especially Drew Phillips, he's playing very well. In New Orleans, Spencer Rattler's playing, honestly, pretty good football. He's getting the job done, not turning the ball over. He's just doing a fine job. He's not the most efficient. He's not pushing the ball down the field or anything crazy like that. But I think he's just doing a solid job getting the ball out to Olave, Rashid Shaheed, some of those tight ends, etc., etc. The offensive line has been quite disappointing this year. I thought that young unit might actually have some potential to be pretty good this year. It's been a bit of a struggle, especially with all the youth and injuries they're going through. Defensively, they got a couple dudes that can play, but they're not really particularly great right now. So I think the Giants have a great chance of winning this game. Ultimately, for me, this one does come down to which team has more confidence in themselves, as we have two teams that are kind of rebuilding and retooling in some ways. The Giants, in my opinion, are a step ahead of where the Saints are currently at. So I'm going to assume the Giants are going to win this game. I don't think it'll be high scoring, but I do think both these offenses have success at some point. Ultimately, I have the Giants winning with a final score 24-17. Moving over to the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are off to a really hot start to their season. I just made a Colts video, so if you are a Colts fan, go ahead and check out that Colts video. It should be pinned up at the end of the video, but stay tuned for the rest of this one, of course. They're coming off a game where, honestly, they outplayed the Rams in a lot of ways. Yes, Jones threw 2 picks. One of them was late, and he was just trying to force things, but Adonai Mitchell cost them 14 points. You put 14 points back on the board. It's 34-27 in favor of Indianapolis. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, it don't matter. It did not happen. But the Colts are 3-1. They have a big win versus Denver. They have a loss versus the Rams that I still think is probably one of the best losses in all of the NFL, if that's a good thing to say. They're playing at a high level. That's just the easy way to put it. They got weapons. They got an offensive line. Their defense is playing good enough football. They're creating turnovers. And they're going up against the Raiders team that, simply put, has major flaws on the offensive end and even defensively. Defensively, their secondary is not particularly great. The linebacker play is not great either. Max Crosby can and will ruin some plays because he's an absolute freak of nature. And they got some other dudes on the defensive line that can actually go. But on the offensive end, yes, you got Bowers. Yes, you got Myers. Yes, you got Ashton Genty. But you got one of the worst offensive lines in the league. And Geno Smith has just not played good football. A lot of turnover-worthy plays, missing throws. Yes, he'll make a tight window play that's the Geno we saw in 2024. Just hasn't been the same this year, and he's missing a lot of easy things. So yes, I think the Raiders will score points. Yes, Genti has some, newfound confidence after week 4. I think he'll play fine in this game, and I think that ultimately the Raiders will score points versus this Colts defense. But when it comes down to it, I just think Jonathan Taylor, all those receivers, Tyler Warren, Daniel Jones, it's going to be pretty easy pickings out there for them. I think they're going to have a ton of success, barring Max Crosby just completely annihilating them, which even if he does have a good game, I don't think it's going to matter. The Colts are just by far the better team. So because of that, I am going to pick the Colts to win. I think they win by double digits, but I do think it's a fairly close game throughout. I have the final score 30-20 in favor of Indianapolis. Moving over to the Carolina Panthers versus the Miami Dolphins. Back-to-back weeks for this Dolphins team to sort of figure out who they are, especially against bad competition, just to get a little bit of some confidence. They beat up on the Jets. Tyreek Hill's out for the season. Gruesome injury. I hope that he's okay in the future, especially with his age and what he relies on. I hope that he's fine long-term. When it comes down to it, though, this Dolphins team has to figure out ways to get the ball into Jalen Waddle's hand. We saw Darren Waller catch a couple passes. We'll see if he can get something going. 2 touchdowns last week. We'll see if he can keep that up. Spoiler alert, he probably won't. But let's see if he can get some more touchdowns down the stretch here. And I think they're figuring things out. They have a ton of issues. The offensive line, and especially in the interior, is not good. The defensive line has been very disappointing. The secondary is not good. Fortunately for them, they're going up against the Panthers team that I just don't know who they are right now. I don't think Bryce Young is a bad quarterback by no means, but he also can't elevate the talent around him. Canales, in my opinion, has regressed as a coach from what we saw late into last year. He just hasn't been great so far this year. The players around Bryce have also regressed. The offensive line, the run game, outside of Tet McMillan, receiving core is kind of inconsistent. I like Jalen Coker too, but still, it's pretty inconsistent. Defensively, they played great versus Atlanta and then looked abysmal versus New England. So I don't know what version of this Panthers defense we're going to get. When it comes down to it, I think Miami is starting to play better football. They're coming off a win. They got a bit more confidence now from what we saw early in the season. And let's be honest, week 2 and 3, they didn't play great, but they did play slightly better. If they have enough personnel to win games, I just don't know if Carolina knows who they are right now. Could Carolina win this game? Yes, we've seen them beat up on Atlanta. Maybe they can beat up on Miami. I don't think so, though. I think we get kind of a moderate average game here where the Dolphins win this one. I just hope the Panthers can stay in this game and not get blown out like we've seen the past couple games. Hopefully they can stay in it. Hopefully it's a close back and forth game, which is what I'm going to predict. But I think ultimately Tua will make enough plays. I think they'll run the football decent enough, especially within, some of the other ways you can run the football and within the screen game, RPO, etc., etc. So if they can handle their business, I have the Miami Dolphins winning with a final score 24-21. Next up, big game here. The Denver Broncos going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia is my #1 team in all of the NFL, but even they have shown a little bit of some offensive issues. The pass game has not been great. They haven't really gotten Saquon Barkley going. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith have been almost non-factors this year, minus a third, fourth quarter versus the Rams. So it's been kind of a quiet offensive showcase for them, yet they have victories over the LA Rams, who are in my top 5, the Buccaneers, who are in my top 10, even the Dallas Cowboys, who are, in my opinion, a pretty solid football team. Oh, and by the way, the Kansas City Chiefs too. So despite the fact the Eagles are not really a great offense, they're 4-0 and the best team in all of the NFL. They got talent all over the place that they just have so many ways of winning games. And even when they're not playing at a 100% level, if they show up at 50%, they're usually going to win. And versus this Broncos team, they got to be better than 50% of what they can do, but I don't think they also have to be 100%. Bo Nix is not playing at a very high level. I thought he made some improvements versus Cincinnati, but how much can you take from that? Cincinnati stinks, so it's just not that impressive to me. But Bo has shown that he has gotten better week in and week out, but not significantly. He's going to have to take a significant jump here if he wants to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. He just has to play clean, sharp football, and when there's an opportunity to make a big play, they have to capitalize. Defensively, I do think Denver will slow down this Philadelphia offense. I don't see A.J. Brown nor Devontae Smith getting going just because Jalen Hurts will not make tight window throws. I do think the defensive line for Denver will get after Hurts a little bit, force him out of the pocket. They're going to have to get Saquon Barkley going. If they can get Saquon going, then I think they'll score some points. When it comes down to it, though, I just don't know if I can get enough of this Broncos offense to find a way to win this game. I think Philly has enough on the offensive end to score some points, at least 20. I don't know if I can get 20 from this Broncos team against this Philadelphia defense. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I'm a Cowboys fan. Of course I hope I'm wrong. But I will predict Philadelphia to win this game. I think we get a close game that comes down to the wire. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, Saquon has a couple big plays. They can get something going with A.J. Brown eventually at some point. And when it comes down to it, Bo Nix and this offense just can't quite get over that hump. Still, though, with a close loss, I think the Denver Broncos feel okay, even though they do lose this game. I have Philadelphia winning this game with a final score 23-19. Moving over to the Houston Texans going up against the Baltimore Ravens. It's important to mention Lamar Jackson is not looking like he will go in this game. So if Lamar magically does play, then obviously my prediction changes. But as of when I'm recording this video, which is Thursday in the morning, I do not believe Lamar will play in this game. So I'm going to make this prediction assuming Lamar is not there. Without Lamar Jackson, this Ravens team is honestly kind of screwed. Cooper Rush is just not a good quarterback, and I don't think he's a good quarterback within this particular system either. And defensively, they're just a complete mess right now. Now, granted, Houston is kind of the polar opposite. Great defense, abysmal offense. But surprisingly speaking, I still trust Stroud a lot more than I trust Cooper Rush, despite Stroud having a horrific offensive line. Go look up compilations of this offensive line on Twitter, TikTok, whatever you can find. It's hysterical. It's just, they're so bad. But even then, I do think Stroud will have success. And here's why. Cooper Rush has a good set of personnel around him. I think they can run the ball somewhat well with Derrick Henry, but they're going up against a stout, and I mean stout, Houston Texans defense. That's one of the best in all of football, and I don't see Cooper Rush scoring more than 20 points on this Texans defense. So all I need from Stroud is to play decent enough football, and I think they got a bit of a rhythm going in the fourth quarter versus Tennessee. But this Ravens defense is one of the worst in all of football, and I think CJ Stroud could find some things going here. Now, maybe the Ravens have just been underperforming and they'll show up big time without their star quarterback. This offense will play just good enough and get enough points, and this defense will finally lock in. But from what I have seen, I haven't seen that from this team. Roquan Smith has taken a step back. They're banged up on the defensive line. They don't have a ton of depth there either because guys like Mike Green have not been great so far. Marlon Humphrey's more focused on podcast and YouTube than playing football. It kind of feels like it's Kyle Hamilton and a handful of other guys that are locking down, but outside of that, it's been a big struggle for this defense. Oh, and Zach Orr hasn't been great at calling plays either. So it's a tough spot here for the Ravens. You don't have your star quarterback. You don't have an offense that can score 50 points whenever they want to, but you also have a defense that's really struggling right now. So I could see Stroud having a somewhat solid game here versus a bad Ravens defense, and they could just do enough offensively. Defensively, they'll lock down Cooper Rush. I have no concerns about it. I have the Texans winning. And it's sad to say, but I have the Ravens going 1-4 in their first 5 games and looking like they might not make the playoffs. But I have the Houston Texans winning this game. I think it'll be a low-scoring game where Stroud just has to make enough plays. I have the final score 20-14 in favor of Houston. Moving over to our 3 o'clock slate, we're going to begin with the Tennessee Titans going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this is a very unflashy game. You look on paper, oh, Tennessee versus Arizona. This game's going to be boring. And in some ways, it might, but I'm kind of intrigued to see what this Titans team looks like after we saw Cam Ward basically call out the entire roster with the comments he made saying, and I quote, "we ass." It's going to be really intriguing to see whether or not they stand up and fight and actually play and go with this young quarterback, or if they just continue the trend of just not playing at a high enough level. Arizona will give Tennessee chances because Arizona has given teams chances all year long. It's why they've lost 2 games, and it's why they've won 2 games by small margins. So Tennessee will be in this game, and it's going to be interesting to see if they can capitalize and make a few plays, because this would be a huge game for Tennessee to potentially win and just get a little bit of some moxie back after a really tough start to their season. Arizona, though, did get things going versus, in my opinion, a great Seahawks team. They got things going with Marvin Harrison Jr. making big-time plays. And if they can continue this trend into this game, because they're going to have to pass the football. They do not have a running back on the field right now that I think is really that great. Trey Benson's on IR, no James Conner. Who knows who's going to be running the rock there? Kyler Murray's going to have to use his legs to keep the defense honest. You got to get Marv going. You got to get Trey McBride going. If they can get that, I think defensively they'll make enough plays. And ultimately, I do think Arizona's just the better team straight up. But if Tennessee comes out there and has some legit juice, maybe they make it close. Maybe this is a game that goes 4 quarters and maybe Arizona slips up, makes a mistake, and we have a Cleveland Green Bay sort of situation where Cleveland thinks they're going to lose, Green Bay thinks they're going to win, a couple things fall, the dominoes start falling, Cleveland ends up finally winning a game. Maybe that happens here. But if Arizona just handles their business, they're the better team, with a better quarterback, with the better receivers, with the better defense, they have every advantage. I will go with Arizona to win this game, but this is one of those games where it's a bit of a trap one. We'll keep an eye on it. I got Arizona winning here. I think they win this game 27-14. Next up, probably the game of the week. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers squaring off against the Seattle Seahawks. There's a couple really interesting games this week, but for sure, this is definitely one of the ones you got to keep an eye on. These are two NFC teams that are absolutely going to be fighting from start to finish. These two teams both could be a playoff caliber roster. This could be a playoff matchup we see in a couple months. So keep an eye on this one. Tampa Bay is a bit banged up. They have a handful of injuries, Mike Evans, etc., etc. Seattle, a fairly healthy roster with a lot of things going their way. This is going to be interesting. I do think Seattle is going to have to basically at some point become a bit one-dimensional because I don't think Kenneth Walker nor Charbonnet will be able to run with Vita Vea on the defensive line. If they slow down Saquon, they'll slow down any roster in the NFL. I think Tampa Bay has one of the best run defenses out there. So it's going to be really dependent on Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp, and some of those other receivers, Elijah Arroyo too, to find separation, make big plays, and consistently be available for Sam Darnold. I don't think the pass rush for Tampa Bay is particularly great, so I do think Darnold will have time and feel fairly comfortable within the pocket. However, if a guy like Hassan Reddick or Diaby can get going, that does muddy up Darnold a little bit and could make things difficult. Darnold's playing great, clean football, not making mistakes, putting the ball where it needs to be. Taking care of the football is one of the biggest things for a quarterback. He's doing so. He's playing like a game manager, but even beyond that, he is making the big plays when he has to. So shout out Sam Darnold. I do think he'll find success here. However, because they will be one-dimensional, I do think that the Buccaneers can sort of pin their ears back and make things slightly more difficult for Seattle. Whereas on the flip side, I do think Tampa Bay will be able to move the football in a variety of ways. They got some running backs that can go. Rashad White, I think, will have to be used a bit more in this game. I think, of course, you have Baker Mayfield playing at a high level. There's also some motivation here after a disappointing loss last week for Tampa Bay to bounce back and find a way to win this one. Both these teams need to win this game to sort of prove to themselves they are who, we all want them to be. So to me, it's kind of a coin toss game. I like the matchup of Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin going up against Woolen and Witherspoon. I think that's going to be a ton of fun. I want to see this Bucs offensive line go up against a really good Seahawks defensive line. I think Seattle has the better defense. I think Tampa Bay has the better offense. It's going to be a really fun matchup. It's a coin toss game. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay to win this one. Again, it could go either way. If you got Seattle winning, I don't disagree with you. But in my power rankings, I got the Bucs, I think, at 8 and Seattle at 10. It's really close. It's a coin toss game. It's a fun game. I think it'll be close throughout. I don't know how it'll end, but I do think ultimately the Buccaneers will win this one. A coin toss. I got the Bucs winning this game with a final score 24-27. Moving over to the Detroit Lions going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'll keep this one short and sweet. The Bengals have nothing right now. They're a shitty defense. They have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Browning is a bad starting quarterback. And unfortunately, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are locked up in hell until Joe Burrow comes back. There's nothing this Bengals team can do right now. They can't run it. They can't pass it. They can't play defense. They do not have anything to hang their hat on. They also just don't have great coaching either. Whereas in Detroit, they should have a field day here. I don't think the game will be close. I think Detroit just absolutely muddies the... I think Detroit just absolutely puts them in a locker and beats them down, puts their head in the toilet and swirl them around. This will not be a close game. If this game is close, I'll put $100 down on it. I'm not actually going to do it, but I would put $100 down. The Bengals will not win this game. If the Bengals win this game, man, I'm going to have to do an apology video, but I got the Lions winning. I don't think it'll be close. I think it's going to be an absolute beatdown. The question will be, who's not going to win? It's going to be how many points can the Detroit Lions get up to? Can they get to 40? Can they get to 50? I wouldn't hold it against them. I'm not going to predict that. I'm going to predict the final score to be 34-7 in favor of Detroit. Yeah, 34-7 Detroit. Next up, another huge game. The Washington Commanders going up against the LA Chargers. Kind of like Tampa Bay and Seattle, this is a bit of a coin toss game. I do think the Chargers are a better team. but they are slightly more banged up. Questions on the offensive line, no Khalil Mack, those things do stack up. Two pretty solid defenses, but I ultimately do think the Chargers have the better defense. The question will be, I know Daniels will go on this one, how good is he and how ready is he available to go? Because if he is 100% and able to run, make plays out of structure, all those sort of things, then I do think it favors Washington offensively to make enough plays to win the game. But if Daniels is limited and can't quite run to his usual ability, or maybe has to leave the game at some point because he's still banged up, then obviously LA would be favored here. It's a coin toss game. I think Herbert will have a big day. I think QJ will have another big one. I think low-key this is one of those underrated games that could have a ton of points scored. Even though both these defenses are pretty solid, I just think these are two teams that need to get a victory, that have two excellent quarterbacks that are absolutely going to duel here. I think we get a high-scoring game. I do think Jaden Daniels is going to be healthy. He's been resting. He's been fine. I think he comes back with some new energy, a bit of vengeance on his mind to get this team back on track. Whereas for the Chargers, because of some injuries, I do think defensively for Washington, they could just make enough plays, maybe get a turnover here or there. I think they'll be able to stuff the run. I think this Chargers team will be a little bit one-dimensional, whereas the Commanders can just fully go wherever you want. It's kind of a coin toss game here. I think the Chargers could win. I'm going to predict the Commanders to win. I'm going to predict them to win. I think Daniels has a big game here. I think he gets going. I think they run the football. They make plays out of structure. It's a close, competitive game that maybe has a couple points scored, a good amount of points scored. I just think Daniels might be a bit of an X factor here, despite the fact I think Herbert's the better quarterback, at least for this year. I do think Daniels will have some energy and some excitement to really run and make plays. I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels and the Commanders to win a high-scoring game. I have the final score 30-24 in favor of Washington. Maybe they score on a game-winning touchdown. Something like that would be fun. Next up, let's talk about our Sunday night football game between the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills will be favored, and they should be. But don't count out the Patriots here. In division matchups versus a Bills team that might be, kind of sleepwalking through their schedule a little bit because of how easy it is, there is a possibility the Bills maybe don't show up 100% for this game, and maybe the Patriots can show up and make enough plays. It's totally possible. But if Josh Allen, James Cook, this offensive line and the receivers just play up to 80% of who they typically are, the Bills offense will score a ton of points. This Patriots defense has talent. They got some pieces, but they're not good enough on the defensive line or the front seven in general. And they got some questions in the secondary too. So I do think Buffalo will be able to move the football, not really at will, but almost to that point. Defensively for Buffalo, they're a really solid unit. I think they'll slow down Drake May, maybe force a turnover or two. May is playing really good, clean football, and I think he will definitely get his, and I'm sure Diggs will have a nice day too. Nice little, return game for Diggs going back to Buffalo. It'll be quite interesting. When it comes down to it, though, I don't know how you can count out Josh Allen. They're playing at such an elite level. They've shown up in other games that could be considered trap games, like the Jets game, like the Dolphins game. So this is another one of those where it's like, just show up, continue doing what you're doing, and don't get down, and you'll be fine. I think the environment will be fun. I got the Buffalo Bills winning this one. I think it's close. I think it goes for about 3 quarters, but eventually Josh Allen makes a big play down the field that just sort of shuts the door on that Patriots attempt to win. I have the final score in this game, 24-18 in favor of the Buffalo Bills. And lastly, our Monday Night Football game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a very fun game. Granted, should this game be played on a Monday? I don't know. I think I'd rather see Tampa Bay and Seattle on Monday or Washington, LA on Monday, but I digress. This game should still be pretty interesting. Sneakily, the Jaguars are a solid team. I have a ton of questions about this offense, but defensively, they can go. Kansas City found some things out last week versus a bad Baltimore defense. They made plays with Worthy. They got the ball out. Mahomes looked awesome, one of his best games in a long time. And I'm hopeful that he can kind of, keep up that momentum heading into this game. Again, Jacksonville defensively is playing well. They can get after the quarterback. They got some guys in the secondary who are balling right now. I'm intrigued to see where they put Travis Hunter in this game. Do they keep him more on the offensive end? Do they put him on the defensive side of things a bit more to cover guys like Worthy or cover the other of these receivers for the city? I do think he'll probably end up playing more offense, but that's just a question we have to ask ourselves every game. For Jacksonville, can Trevor Lawrence dice up a Chiefs defense that is really good, but can he make enough plays? Can he get the ball to BTJ, Bretton Strange? Can he get the ball to Travis Hunter? Can they run the football? I have a couple concerns about Jacksonville's offense. I don't know if they're going to be able to realistically get going in this game because the Chiefs do have a really good defense, and I think there is some newfound confidence in this Chiefs offense. I know they can't run the football. I know they'll be one-dimensional, but Worthy opens up this offense a ton more. I'm going to go with the Chiefs to win this game. I just trust them more. I just know who they are at this point. They're a good team. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, one of the best head coaches in the league, and a great defense. Jacksonville, I just don't know if they have the quarterback or the offense to really stay in this game. I'm thinking this will be sort of a similar game between the Giants and Chiefs, where the Chiefs, they win the game quite comfortably, but it's never like a blowout. There's always a chance that in that game the Giants could have won. I think it'll be the case, but I do think Jacksonville will play it a little bit closer than the Giants. I think the final score will be something like 22-16 in favor of Kansas City. But these are my picks for week 5 of the 2025 NFL season. We also have our first set of buys here with the Chicago Bears, the Atlanta Falcons, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Green Bay Packers. But you guys let me know in the comment section below what picks do you agree with and disagree with. And if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.